So you want to read Aleister Crowley, but you feel intimidated. I don't blame you. The guy had an IQ of like 300, and he would write more before finishing his first cup of coffee in the morning than most people write in an entire year. But you're in luck. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 10 works of Crowley's that I think you should start with. This will help you overcome your fear and start understanding Thelema the way Aleister Crowley understood it. So let's get started. So the first work I'm going to suggest to you is Crowley's Introduction to the Book of the Law. Now, I assume most of you have read or are reading the Book of the Law. Crowley wrote this introduction to it in the late 1930s, and I think it's a great work for beginners to help them understand how Crowley understood Thelema. In it, he explains Nuit, Hadit, Rahor Kuit, and the star. He also goes into how he understood Thelema in the context of modern society and how he saw it impacting the world. All of this makes the Introduction to the Book of the Law a great text for beginners. The second text I'm going to suggest is the essay Duty, which is a great text on the ethics of Thelema for beginners. Duty is great because it explains Thelemic ethics in the context of Crowley's understanding of nature and of the individual and their true will. It lays out a clear Thelemic vision on how to relate to yourself, to other people, and to the world. And in general, I think it's great at helping a beginner figure out whether the Thelemic worldview, lifestyle, ethics, and path are for them. The third text I would suggest is Liber 150, De Lege Libellum. This text presents Crowley's views on the human condition, the main problems to be solved, and how Thelema might address those problems. This text presents Thelema as a spiritual path in some ways similar to how the Buddhist view is presented in the Noble Eightfold Path. This text is a little denser and a little more difficult than the other ones, but I still think that it's accessible to a beginner. The fourth text that I would suggest is Liber 2, Message of the Master Therion. This is an extremely short text in which Crowley states in plain terms what Thelema is. This text is important because it describes the relationship between the idea of the true will and mysticism, or the great work. This text is a little bit short on details, so you cannot rely on it exclusively, but it provides a great point of orientation for beginners. My fifth suggestion is selections from the commentaries on the Book of the Law. Crowley wrote a few commentaries on the Book of the Law, though the most important are probably the Old Comment and the New Comment. The commentaries are really useful for understanding Thelema as a view on the universe and as a way of life. In other words, as a philosophy. The commentaries are also voluminous. You can find a truncated version of them in the book, The Laws for All. They can be a bit intimidating at times. I have put selections from them on my website, The Mouth of the Beast, which I think are really helpful for beginners. If you read these selections from the commentaries that I've pulled out, you're going to have a really strong grasp of the fundamentals of Thelema. So you may want to check those out. The sixth work that I would suggest would be Chapter 12 of Magick Without Tears. Now, Magick Without Tears in general is not a great beginner work. I think the content is really uneven. But this chapter in particular is really great for a beginner to read. In this chapter, Crowley sharply distinguishes between what he calls the saints and the Black Brothers. This really helps make it clear what the Thelemic spiritual path is about and how Crowley understood it in opposition to other spiritual paths. This chapter also contains some long quotes from Liber 418. This is another really interesting work that you're going to want to read at some point down the line, but the passages that he includes in here are particularly relevant to this idea of the spiritual pinnacle of Thelema, so it's definitely worth checking out. My seventh recommendation is the chapter De Cultu in the book Liber Aleph. So Liber Aleph is a little bit tough, mostly because of the prose in it. It's written in this kind of Renfair style, which is really obnoxious. I think De Cultu is a really important chapter because it lays out the spiritual practices that Crowley thought were the most important to follow. Another great work for understanding Crowley's worldview, I think, is the introduction and chapter 0 of Magick in Theory and Practice. The introduction to this work explains magic in a way that makes it relevant to everyday life, to daily life. I also think the introduction does a lot to clarify the concept of true will. The 0 chapter explains in a very succinct way Crowley's view of the universe and how he saw the Kabbalah relating to it. I think if you read chapter 0 alongside the new comment, I think it's very clarifying for how Crowley understood reality. So I would suggest checking that out as well. My 9th suggestion is to read Equinox of the Gods. This is part 4 of book 4. This is like a shortened autobiography that Crowley wrote, but there's a lot of emphasis in Equinox of the Gods on the reception of the Book of the Law and how Crowley understood what Thelema was. I think Equinox of the Gods is a great beginner book because it gives you a really quick sense of who Crowley was and what Thelema meant to him. Finally, I would suggest reading John St. John. This is a record that Crowley kept of a magical retirement that he went on, in which he was attempting to solidify his contact with his holy guardian angel. I think this is really good for a beginner to read because it gives a sense of what it is actually like to practice Thelema intensely and from an esoteric spiritual perspective. It really takes what is abstract and helps fill it out as an actual spiritual path. Hopefully this video has given you a good starting place for the exploration of Crowley, or if you're already reading Crowley, hopefully it will help you fill in some gaps in your knowledge. What do you think? Did you find these suggestions helpful? Do you think that there's anything that I missed that should have been included in the list? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you enjoy this video, there's a really good chance you're going to enjoy this other video as well. Until next time, love is the law. Love under will.